Mikhail said he grew up in a city of red brick and white stone, where every major building had copper domes that sang in the wind. He used that exact word, sang. Sang. Musical notes, harmonies, chords that changed with the weather. He said if you stood in the right spot in the market square on a windy day, you could hear harmonies, multiple tones layering over each other, rising and falling with the breeze like an invisible choir. He said the sound made you feel calm, made anxiety dissolve, made anger seem pointless. He said the buildings were not just buildings, they were instruments. The entire city was an instrument. I talked to an old woman who sold flowers near the Kremlin gate. I bought carnations and asked if she'd heard any stories about the old buildings, about what they used to be like before renovations. She didn't answer immediately. Then she said in Russian, "My grandmother said they used to sing. The towers." She said you could feel it in your bones. A vibration that made you calm, that made you remember you belonged somewhere. Then she leaned closer. Grandmother said people were different then, before they changed the buildings. She said people lived longer, were healthier, less angry. She said the buildings did something to the air, made it good for people. Grandmother died in 1963. She said it was better not to talk about old things, said it brought trouble. Anastasia wrote, "They are changing the buildings again. The old stone circles around the foundations, the ones grandmother called boundary stones. They're digging them up and hauling them away. The workers don't know what they are. They think they're just old foundation stones, worthless. Just that without them, the city breathes wrong." I don't know what she meant, but I feel it now. The air feels different since they started removing them. Heavier, less alive. She said they broke something when they took down those domes. They thought it was just decoration, thought it was just metal, but it was doing something, regulating something. And now we're paying the price. Mikhail watched her die of pneumonia in 1908. She was 65. Before 1897, women in her family routinely lived into their 80s. Wilhelm Schaefer disappeared. A respected engineer publishes a paper describing advanced acoustic engineering in Russian architecture, then vanishes from all records. Knowledge of harmonic acoustics, far in advance of current European science. The copper dome assemblies function as Helmholtz resonators, acoustic cavities tuned to specific atmospheric frequencies. Each dome is tuned to a different fundamental frequency. When wind passes over the dome structures, standing waves are established. These waves interact with each other, creating interference patterns that appear to modify local atmospheric pressure patterns over a radius of approximately 2-3 kilometers. The combined system appears designed to create a stable acoustic environment that dampens pressure fluctuations and maintains atmospheric equilibrium. What is undeniable is the engineering sophistication, the precision of tuning, the coordination across multiple structures, the mathematical relationships embedded in the architecture. This suggests knowledge of wave mechanics and atmospheric physics that should not exist in structures this old. Then I calculated the ratios. From the Kremlin to the Marjani Mosque, 1,247 meters. From the Marjani Mosque to Epiphany Cathedral, 2,017 meters. Ratio 11.617. The golden ratio is 1.618. From Epiphany Cathedral to Gostiny Dvor, 1,247 meters. From Gostiny Dvor to Church of the Exaltation, 3,010 meters. Ratio 1:2.413. The silver ratio is 1:2.414. The same pattern appeared in Samara. I found pre-1920 city plans in the Samara Oblast archive, marked the major buildings, connected them. Equilateral triangles, golden ratio spacing, silver ratio spacing, Tobolsk, same pattern. Yekaterinburg, before the 1930s reconstructions. Same pattern. Someone designed these cities according to geometric principles. Someone placed the major buildings with mathematical precision across distances of kilometers. And then, Starting in the 1890s and accelerating through the 1920s and 30s, those buildings were systematically altered or destroyed. The domes removed, the foundations dug up, the bells confiscated, the geometric relationships broken, the grid shattered. Tobolsk, 1929. A school teacher named Dmitry Petrov was arrested for anti-Soviet propaganda and mystical thinking. His crime, according to the NKVD file I found in the Memorial Society's digitized archive, was telling his students that the old city had purposes we no longer understand. The file quotes his classroom lecture from March 1920, Our ancestors knew things we've forgotten. Look at the old buildings, the proportions, the placements, the relationships between structures. These were not random. These were not merely aesthetic. The buildings remember even if we don't. They were built to do something. To serve a function we've lost the language to describe. 3 students reported him. He was arrested the next day. Sentenced to 10 years hard labor. Destination Solovki, the prison camp on the White Sea. He died in transit. The file includes a note from the interrogator. Subject showed signs of delusional thinking regarding buildings and historical knowledge. Recommended psychological evaluation. He said, in the summer, even during the worst heat, the old city center was cool. Not shaded, cool. The air itself was different near the old buildings. It moved differently. Felt different on your skin. In winter, less snow fell in the city center than fell in the outskirts just 2 kilometers away. You could see the line where the snowfall changed, right at the edge of where the old buildings stopped. He said people were healthier in the old city center, lived longer, fewer epidemics. When cholera swept through the region in 1892, it killed hundreds in the newer districts of Kazan, but barely touched the old center. After the copper domes were removed from the Kremlin towers, the summers got hotter. The air stopped moving the same way. The winter snow fell evenly across the city, and people started getting sicker more often.
Atmospheric electricity refers to natural electrical phenomena in the Earth's atmosphere, such as lightning, thunderstorms, and the continuous atmospheric electric baseline or global electric circuit that is constantly in the air around us at all times. Corona discharge is a process where a current flows from an electrode with a high voltage into the air surrounding it, creating a luminous glow and ionizing the air. Another phrase for this is called St. Elmo's fire. Here's an example of this phenomenon actually occurring at one of these very pagodas, courtesy of Tartarian Empire on Instagram. So here's my hypothesis in a nutshell, my speculation really, is that these pagodas would harness large amounts of atmospheric electricity. The great bell of Damazetti would then be rung, which would cause the pagodas to vibrate and create a profound electromagnetic reaction. Think of it the same way as the radio in your car, how it's a wireless receiver and the radio tower miles away is the wireless transmitter, or how your Wi-Fi router in your house is your transmitter and the receiver is the Wi-Fi card in your laptop or phone. A few months ago, I bought a set of 440 Hz tuning forks and an A4 handbell. The musical note A4 matches the 440 Hz resonant frequency. On your screen now, you can see me ringing the handbell and causing the tuning fork to vibrate. Make no mistake, this is not caused by sound waves alone. This is harmonic resonance. If I replace the tuning fork with any other frequency but 440 Hz, it wouldn't match and the tuning fork would not vibrate. For instance, if I replace the 440 Hz tuning fork with a 512 Hz tuning fork, then rang the bell, nothing would happen. However, if I bought a C5 handbell, that 512 Hz fork would resonate with it. Here's a list of a few common musical notes and their corresponding resonant frequencies. When the great bell of Damazetti was rung, it would transmit sound waves through the air, which would then be picked up by the pagoda receivers and vibrate.
The evidence for ancient technology is not going to be found near these temples. It's going to be the temple, which is Angkor Wat, and this is a CMOS sensor. Any digital camera will have one of these. That's Angkor Wat from above. What does the CMOS sensor do? It takes in light and converts that light to electrical signal. Why would ancients want to do that? To make that signal usable, we use something called a high-frequency oscillator. These create stable frequencies with no moving parts. They're used in everything. Should be no surprise at this point, the geometry of that oscillator is 4 resonators around one central resonator. Tesla uses these, which could be confused with ancient Peruvian architecture if you follow me. All resonators work by using cavities to excite and amplify a desired frequency in the center. The acoustic waveguide for our oscillator happens to look just like that. If you watch the Prambanan video, you know that the interior of these temples looks just like a corrugated horn antenna. Those peaks are not decorative, they focus the signal as it exits the cone. This minimizes power loss and strengthens the signal. A phased array arrangement focuses the signal into the main horn. That is what the signal looks like, and that may be your design inspiration for a tower. This one is absolutely massive. It's made of marble, it's 3D, and it's as detailed as a Gothic cathedral. This is the particle collider. From the side, if you look straight through it, an outer circle and an inner circle. Look what happens when we use that inner circle with the Delwara temple ceiling. As an engineer myself, I was like, that's a dope coincidence. So I was trying to find what inspired them to carve something like that. If you dig deep enough, you'll discover that the quantum pioneers almost all studied the Hindu tradition. Schrödinger, heavily into Eastern mysticism. Bohr was deeply interested in Buddhist concepts that originated from Hindu philosophy. Heisenberg had frequent discussions with Rabindranath Tagore. He was the Da Vinci of Eastern philosophy. The most famous quote from Oppenheimer is from the Bhagavad Gita. Why? Well, the concepts are almost exactly the same. Collapsing the wave function, that's Purusha. It just means consciousness builds the material world. The observer effect, where observing affects the outcome of an experiment, is the eternal witness in Vedic text. Just Google Sakshi. Non-locality or entanglement is the same as non-duality, the same thing that Schrödinger was studying. How? Superposition, particles existing in multiple states until measured, that is exactly the Atman. Okay, quantum field. It says even empty space isn't empty. Same exact thing as the Akash. It's the field that holds everything together. This one's my favorite, the multiverse theory. Infinite parallel realities. That is exactly how the lokas are defined in Vedic cosmology.